Hi everyone! Today we will discuss how integrating AI into organizations enhance productivity. However, prioritizing productivity can lead to ethical dilemmas since AI inherently lacks ethics. We'll explore two cases, one highlighting AI's productivity benefits and the other addressing its ethical challenges, along with some strategies for ethical AI implementation in organization. I'm Lucia Tamayo, and I'm joined by Angel Spacapan and Randy Suarez. So the first case we're going to be discussing today is called Can AI Address Healthcare's Red Tape Problem? And you may be asking, what is a red tape problem? It basically refers to the administrative complexities and regulations within the healthcare system that can impede the delivery of care, increase costs, and create inefficiencies. Administrative and operational inefficiencies account for nearly one-third of the U.S. healthcare system's $3 trillion annual costs. Using capable AI-powered tools, some hospitals and insurance are discovering that they can reduce administrative hours, especially in the areas of regulatory documentation and fraudulent claims. This allows healthcare employees to devote more of their time to patients and focus on meeting their needs more efficiently. The case provides us with three ways AI is currently helping the system. The first one being faster hospital bed assignments. An example of that would be an AI-powered control center at Johns Hopkins Hospital, which has been able to foresee bottlenecks and suggest corrective actions to avoid them, resulting in a 30% faster rate when assigning beds, meaning more hospital revenue. The second one is easier and improved documentation. An AI tool created by Nuance Communication offers real-time suggestions to doctors on how to comply with federal guidelines by analyzing both patient clinical data and administrative data. The third one given is automated fraud detection. A startup called FraudScope has already saved insurers more than $1 billion by using machine learning algorithms to identify potentially fraudulent claims and alert investigators prior to payment.
So after analyzing this first case, we came up with a couple of recommendations that we believe will solve these inefficiencies that currently exist in the healthcare industry and really push the industry as a whole forward using AI. So the first recommendation would be to automate and essentially reduce your workforce. So currently in healthcare systems, we have um, hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that currently exist that are really just very mundane tasks, very repetitive and simple tasks that we currently hire individuals for, which can really be automated. Um, so, a big step in reducing inefficiencies in healthcare would really be to implement AI to automate all these simple tasks, such as bed assigners, um, people who scribes who copy down notes from doctors and just automate all those processes so you can essentially reduce your workforce, reduce overhead costs and administrative costs, and focus instead on hiring critical thinkers, problem solvers who are able to work alongside AI to improve efficiency and to continue to evolve and implement AI throughout the healthcare system and essentially pay these new employees a better salary with the money that you're saving and really have them be real problem solvers and real innovators versus just hiring people to do the most simplest of tasks. And the second recommendation is to break through the late adoption problem. So currently, there is this known stigma that healthcare as a whole industry is always the last industry to adopt new technologies, including AI. So we truly believe that the next healthcare system that will surpass all others will be that healthcare system that is able to successfully implement new AI technologies and new technology in general to transform healthcare as we know it. Just reduce so many inefficiencies that currently exist and really break through and transform the way that we interact with healthcare.
The second case we're going to be discussing today is called Why You Need an AI Ethics Committee. It was found that an artificial intelligence from Optum was prompting medical professionals to pay more attention to white people than to black people, a result of historical discrimination in its training data, displaying biased outputs, thus creating the problem. Bias will find its way into AI and machine learning no matter how strong your technology is. But how? What's the reason? Well, in some cases, the problem lies with the goal you've set for your AI, that is, in the decision about what the AI should predict. For example, if you're determining who should get lung transplant, you might prefer to give them to younger patients so that you can maximize the number of years the lungs will be used. But if you ask your AI to determine which patients were most likely to use the lungs for the longest amount of time, it would discriminate against black patients. Why? Because of life expectancy. According to the CDC, the total US population life expectancy is 77.8 years, while the life expectancy for the black population is only 72 years. Due to the complications and the continued hardships, the solution could be to create an AI ethics committee that can identify and mitigate the ethical risks of AI products that are developed in-house or procured from third-party vendors. The committee evaluates AI proposals, checking for ethical risks, suggesting changes, reevaluating after adoption, and/or potentially advising against the development. In order for the AI Ethics Committee to work successfully, the case says these are the people needed and why. The first one being ethics experts, because they have the training, knowledge, and experience needed to understand and spot a vast array of ethical risks and are also familiar with concepts and distinctions that aid in clear eyed ethical deliberations. The next one would be lawyers. Lawyers are needed to figure out whether using a particular metric for fairness that has different effects on different subgroups might be viewed as discrimination under the anti discrimination law. The third one would be business strategists. They're needed to think about the strategies addressing the ethical risks and the investments of time and money those strategies would require. Next would be bias scouts and subject matter experts. These would be those who might spot biases early in the process, and usually subject matter experts are great at this. The next would be technologists. They're needed to help understand the technical underpinnings of AI models, the probability of success of various risk mitigation strategies, and whether some of those strategies are even feasible. Lastly, but maybe the most important, is a senior executive. They're needed basically to overrule the committee, which would let their organization take ethical risks that they consider to be worthwhile.
Let's now analyze in greater detail what exactly the problem with maintaining ethics in AI is. There are multiple sources of bias within AI. As the simple explanation of how AI works is its ability to pull information from various sources of data and come up with a meaningful outcome or solution. The accuracy of these solutions and outcomes largely depends upon what data the AI has at its disposition. As we discussed in class, AI's biggest source of bias is unbalanced data. And as my colleague Lucia mentioned, if AI has data that has been subject to discrimination and is unbalanced, it will use this data to create discriminatory results. The case mentions many examples of this. For example, AI making the assumption that Black people or African Americans generally do not need as much care as white people, and therefore providing a lower level of care or inadequate care. While of course, AI is not inherently racist. The problem here was that it was given data from the past that indicated that Blacks generally received a lower level of healthcare, and it assumed that this was because possibly they needed less healthcare and therefore provided less healthcare, when in reality it's not aware of the fact that Blacks were often discriminated against in the past. Undersampling is a kind of bias that occurs when the sample size is too small to accurately represent a larger population. And proxy bias is kind of similar to what we just talked to, and it refers to AI's inadvertent bias that surfaces when systems are trained using data sets that unintentionally merit societal prejudice. Another example of this is Amazon's hiring scandal. So Amazon had an internal hiring algorithm who was biased against women, even though gender was not explicitly presented to the algorithm as a predictive feature. And this occurred because historical hiring biases existed within the data that AI was using to understand hiring patterns. And so it learned to discriminate against women just by reading some keywords within a resume that would indicate that a candidate was a female, such as join the female volleyball team in high school. AI is not able to solve these problems independently by itself for two reasons. Number one is even though criteria for fairness can be somehow coded within a system, different criteria often clash with each other, and minimizing one aspect of unfairness can maximize a different aspect. And even supervised AI is often unable to address these issues because people who use it and people who train it and programmers, such as data scientists or engineers, are often untrained to deal with complex ethical issues, which is why the case suggests creating an ethical committee of people that are more used to address these issues, such as lawyers. Currently, the concept of implementing an AI ethics committee within an organization has been implemented already within plenty of companies. One of the pioneers of creating ethical AI is actually the IBM Group, which is a company that focuses on creating AI solutions for other companies. And they were one of the ones who readily implemented an ethics committee. Other examples are Salesforce, which created two new positions within their C-suite, a chief equality officer and a chief ethical and humane use officer. And finally, Accenture is a company that created a manual called Building Data and AI Networks Committees for as a model for other companies to use in order to create their own committees. And what all of these companies have in common is that they understand the difference between bias and fairness. So this means that while colloquial definitions of bias and fairness often overlap, meaning that people often assume that something, in order to be fair, needs to be unbiased, there's an important distinction to make between those two words, because bias is a feature of statistical models, while fairness is more of a judgment call. So in order to make AI fair, there's two things you need to do. Number one, just have those types of values within your company so that it aligns better with the whole company culture. And second of all is understanding that sometimes you have to introduce bias within a data set that is unbalanced in order to create fairness. For example, in the Amazon case, historically, women had been hired less. So it would have been crucial for programmers to introduce bias for women so that there would have been more women hired than there actually had been in the past in order to balance the data that by itself would have been unbalanced. So overall, our recommendations to create more ethical AI systems and encourage the establishment of ethical committees is, first of all, establishing a governance for ethics and AI, making sure that there are people within the C-suite that deal specifically with that. A second step is understanding the difference between bias and fairness, and understanding the importance of sometimes implementing bias in order to achieve fairness. Establishing mechanisms of recourse and accountability. When something goes wrong, there needs to be someone that can be contacted, and there needs to be a security from the user side that if AI messes up, somebody is going to be held accountable. The machine can be held accountable, maybe the creator can be held accountable, maybe the company can be held accountable. And overall, just promoting positive values throughout the company is also important so that an ethical company can align properly with its ethical AI system.
After analyzing these two cases, we have concluded as a group that in order for healthcare industries to transform and to really emerge into years to come, would really be to leverage AI, leverage new technologies to our advantage in healthcare systems, and don't be the last adopter. Don't wait too long to implement these changes. So if we can implement AI and use these systems all across our hospitals and find ways to really use AI in every part of hospital, whether it be as simple as checking in or assigning beds, and then more complicated uses such as preventing fraud and waste. We can really reverse this downward spiral of inefficiency, of bad outcomes, and really high costs that we currently see here. And along the way, of course, we know that we need to not just implement AI and just trust the process, but instead focus on creating new segments and new job opportunities in the segment of ethics committees, reviewing the algorithms that AI create constantly to ensure that not only are they fair, but they use bias, if they are biased, in a way that is as fair as possible to improve outcomes for all kinds of patients that we serve.
Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.